photo.
Oh, okay, all right. No, I think it's because I just jumped out to this little dialogue where I have these little questions that I'm gonna have Chief Schneider knock out. Get them written down. All right. I'll just bounce back and forth. Not a big deal. All right. Hey, Caleb, we're ready, man. You want to start letting everybody go in? Are you or Dustin going to do the introduction and like we typically?
I think we were planning on letting you do that.
Okay.
Okay. Dustin, unless you want to, do you want to open instead?
No, go for it, Brock. It's all you. You got it.
All
I'm
right.
just going to sit back.
Chief Goldstrom, just to give you a FYI, Chief Goldstrom is in the waiting room as well. So
Awesome.
I'll get everybody added.
We'll definitely give him a shout.
Awesome. Adding everyone now.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Senior Master Sergeant Procaccino coming here live in my new AOR, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, as the ops chief for the 330 Recruiting Squadron. Here on behalf of Recruiting Service Top 3 with the man, the myth, the legend, Chief Master Sergeant Matt Schneider from the Pentagon and representing United States Space Force. Good afternoon to everybody. I know we have a special guest today, Chief Goldstrom. Welcome, sir. So glad that you can join us and hear what this prestigious chief in AFRS has to say to us top 3 members and 5-6 members and everybody who's joining us today. So today we're going to kind of go over a little bit of resiliency and from a leadership perspective, from Chief Master Sergeant Schneider's perspective. So he's going to be passing out some nuggets, jot them down, do what you want with them, but it's definitely going to be good information to keep as you grow as a leader and as you merge into these leadership positions. And then resilience followed by some professional information where Chief Schneider wants to definitely relay some USSF information for us all, United States Space Force, since I use an acronym. But we're going to roll right into it. We got Sergeant Garza keeping his eye on the chat for any questions. So please, if you want to address any questions to Chief Schneider, just throw them in the text thread. Sergeant Garza will annotate them, and basically when Chief Schneider asks for any questions, he will bring them forth. If we can't get to everybody's question, typically that happens sometimes, we will get the question answered, whether it be email or off topic. So without further ado, I'll let Chief Schneider, before we roll into the questions, if you want to introduce yourself for those who may not have had the pleasure to meet you, and then for everybody else who's excited that you are with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Proc, and thanks everybody for putting this thing on, and thanks Chief Goldstrom for having me on this kind of stuff. I don't work in recruiting service anymore, but I feel like I'm a liaison and a point man for you, because I worked in the A1 and now over to the S1. Chief Toberman asked a few chiefs to come over to help stand up space, and luckily he thought of recruiting, because it's so important and it's such an instrumental piece of any service, really. So to be able to represent you guys in space is an honor, to be honest with you, and it's a lot of work, don't get me wrong, and we're going to look at a lot of things differently. So I'd ask all of you to, when we start talking about this stuff and you hear some of the things I'm going to say, have an open mind with it, because and we'll get into this in a little bit, but I think that we have to fundamentally shift how we think about recruiting in the DoD. And I think space is a good opportunity to start thinking about that. I've been in a recruiting service, an Air Force recruiter for 20 years. And I would offer that I think we're built well for what we did in 2001 and 2002, but I don't know if we're built the way we should be for 2030, because that's the fight that we need to start thinking about now. And the way we did it in the past with success is awesome, and it's great, and it should be celebrated. But I don't know if that's necessarily the way to move things forward. So I look forward to any kind of conversations you have. And if you know me, you've heard me say this before, staffs, techs, and master sergeants are what run this Air Force and what will run the Space Force. And without your input, we don't know anything at a headquarters level. And I don't want to speak for Chief Goldstrom, but from my own perspective, once I got into a headquarters, within 6 months, it was hard to try to figure out what was going on in the field, because that's the lifeblood of everything that we do, name the career field. So when you sit there and you think you're doing the best thing you can, but you don't have that interaction and you're not that close to it, you tend to lose some things. So I try to do my best to get out, even in this COVID environment. But if there's something we learn with COVID, it is that we can use these kind of forums and email, whatever. But please, God, reach out to me. I don't care. You don't have to go through your squadron or group. I'm not going to tell on you and say, why did Procacino email me direct? Well, Proc, you have to go through your group. But for everyone else, please, God, just give me ideas, give me things, give me thoughts, because without you, I can't really formulate anything. So please reach out and we'll work together to try to get this thing right. And what I mean by that is we can use space as maybe a test bed for what we want to do in air or the Army or the Marine Corps or whatever. And I would love to have the Department of the Air Force be the leading edge of how we revolutionize recruiting in the Department of Defense. So I'll turn it back over to you guys. I know there's some questions, and then we'll get into some of that space stuff, Proc.
Yes, sir. So on the topic of resiliency, you know, it's a tough month for some people. Holidays are coming around.
Right.
We have people still deploying, COVID-19, people that are affected by it, being unable to see family members or go travel to see family members. So one thing I did want to see if you can elaborate on or speak on would be, sometimes we fall down a trap as leaders that we just look at people that bounce back or make the comeback being resilient. Could you speak on how bouncing back isn't just the center of being resilient, or what your opinion would be on that?
No, I think bouncing back is a byproduct of being resilient. So, and what I mean by that, resilience is, I mean, there's so many things involved in it. It's not just one magic bullet. It's not just one course you can take. It's not just one training thing that you can do. It is literally a community. I mean, it's, I can't stress this enough. I think the unit is the lifeblood of everything, the squadron, the flight, that if you really want resilient airmen, resilient space professionals, it starts at the unit. And what I mean by that is, you guys are all either leaders or going to be. Well, hell, all of you are leaders because you're all NCOs. But do you know your people? And do you know what makes them tick? Do you know when they're struggling? Do you know that in their successes, they still might be struggling? Do you know in their failures, they might be struggling? And can you identify that and put them in positions to get better? And I use this as an example because it happened to me. There was a boss that I had named Mark Spivak, and this is 100 years ago. But he was my flight chief in New Jersey, and I was like working probably way too many hours. And everyone in my unit was like use that as a look at Schneider, he's working so much. But I was having these episodes, like I would get the spins in the car, and I was having a tough time. Like it sounds weird, but like I would walk in space and I'd get a little dizzy and stuff like that. So I went to a medical appointment at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. It's closed now, but I went to the clinic there, and I told him I was going, and he's like, all right, call me as soon as you're done. I want to know what they had to say. So I called him, and I was like, hey, they think I'm a little stressed out, which I don't get because everything's going good right now. Because it sucked for me my first year, and then in that second year, things started going good. And he's like, so what did they say? I'm like, they said to take a week off and just try to disconnect and then see how I feel and call them back. He's like, all right, good. Let's do that. This was on a Thursday. He's like, starting Monday, you're off for the week. Give me your keys, give me your computer, give me your car keys. You're not allowed in the office for a week, and you got to take a week of leave. And it's like, well, that's not really feasible because I got business going on. He's like, I'll sit in your office and I'll handle all your business. Don't worry about it. Go home. I'm like, yeah, but he's like, so you don't trust me with your people? I'm like, no, okay, that's not it. So I went home and literally just sat in the yard and read a book. And after I called him on a Wednesday and said, hey, do you need anything from me? And he said, I thought I told you not to call me, and I got everything, and just stay home. And after that, I felt 100 times better. So I tell you that story to say, are you grinding your people into the ground, or are you monitoring them and making sure that they're all right? Because it isn't just the person that needs to be resilient. It's the whole flight. It's the whole squadron. It's the whole unit. It's the whole command. It's whatever you want to call it. So are we looking at this holistically to say we need to, because for me, if my family's good, I'm good. And then if work is going good and I'm supported by my leadership, then I'm really good. And then if everyone believes in what I'm doing and the sacrifices we're making, then I'm beyond good. So is it that way every step of the way, or is it something different? And sometimes I see things that really make me pause. And I don't want it to sound like a negative thing. I'd rather keep it positive, but are you supportive of people, and do you know when to let up? Because sometimes your best will want to run as fast as they can, but you know that if you sprint too long, you're going to burn yourself out from that. So do you know when to dial them back and make them take a step back? So no, it's not just being able to bounce back. It's being able to have the whole thing. And to me, it's a mind, body, spirit thing. Like, can you separate yourself from this job and have an outlet with your mind? Are you getting yourself better? Do you read? Do you think? Do you do anything that is not work? And then body wise, you have to me, I have to run. If I am not running, I am a different person. So my running is actually my body and my mind and my spirit, because it's almost like a meditation for me. So do you have that in your life? And then do you have that spirit thing? No matter, I'm not saying religion, but just that kind of thing. So to me, it's so many combinations that I would hope that our leaders, flight, squadron, group, AFRS levels, are looking at this even more than how many people did you put in, because you could put 1 million people in, man, but if you ain't right, what was it worth, and what did it mean? So no, it's not just about bouncing back. That'll happen when you got the resilient piece right, and right is different for everybody, Proc.
Appreciate that, Chief. Next thing I want you to maybe touch on is helping others in avenues that maybe you're not so familiar in. So for instance, Sergeant Spivak, he's production guy, he's seen it. But what if it's something that us production mindset individuals aren't used to? Whether maybe it's a female going through some things, or avenues that some of us senior leaders, male and female flight chiefs, whether dealing with opposite sex or people with different views, things that are stressing them out. How do you relate to people or help people or be resilient with people, that things that you may not be comfortable with or not as knowledgeable with?
Well, I think people is your first job, and production is the second part of it. So, look, I'll always believe that if you take care of people, the hell you care about production for, it'll be fine. So, but if you're the opposite, you're going to burn out your people. So, shit, man, and I didn't mean to curse there, Proc, but if this is the life you've committed yourself to, this NCO thing, this senior NCO thing, this airman thing, it's about the people. Like, if you, I heard, I know I'm getting loud now, man, but I heard this one time, I don't want to get too into their business. Well, damn, they are your business. Like, now, if you're not quite sure how to handle a situation, cool, reach out. We have first sergeants, commanders, all these different people around, because there are certain situations that you might have not handled before. And that's cool, man. We all learn. It's all the first time for everything. But what I don't want you to think is, I'm just a production-based guy, so I don't know these people things. You should not be where you are if that's your thought process. If you're, and I'm not blaming you, Proc, I'm not, I know you would ask the question, but if you're a master sergeant, a senior, a chief, a tech, whatever, and you sit there and go, my main deal here is to get production. And then I'll figure this people thing out later. Cause look yourself in the mirror, take some leave, call me, call somebody, because your main job is your people. And when they're right, production happens. But you can't just be production horse, because you're going to beat the hell out of your people, and then that'll end. You won't even get that production piece. You have to be people in this thing, because that's what we've committed ourselves to when raising our right hand for a few more times. Like if there's anyone out there, and you might disagree with me, or whoever might, and that's cool, that's fine. You can be wrong. No, I'm kidding. But if you don't look at this as a people-oriented business, whether that be the people you're recruiting or the people that work for you, work with you, that you work for, what are you doing? Like, that's the most narcissistic thing I've ever heard. And that's the biggest word I've ever used. So please, God, if you can think of anything, if you get anything from this, if you take care of your people and you set them up, you've set yourself up for success. And it's not about you, don't get me wrong, but damn, man, like, it shouldn't be about, I got to get in there and get production right. No, you get your people right and production happens. That's just easy stuff at that point. You don't even have to worry about that stuff. Typically, the people I meet that go, I'm worried about production, I can look and go, because you sucked at taking care of your people. And it is every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So I'd ask all of you to rethink that, if that's your thought process, and be about your people, because after that, everything else will fall into place. Got me wound up on that one, Proc.
I see the passion, but that, you know what, Chief, that's why we love you, because you deliver that passion with each sentence you speak. So next thing that I wanted to take an opportunity for you to elaborate on would be, what would you say to those senior NCOs who were speaking to these techs and staff sergeants, these tier 1 recruiters, for when they're feeling adversity and it's stressing them out, or it's making them feel like they're not growing in this because they're not getting that promote now strat. We're all going through this right now. EFDPs are taking place. You're going to see a lot of staff sergeants and tech sergeants that are, may find themselves a little stressed out because they didn't grab one of the strats. What would be your advice to the flight chiefs on handling that and showing up, like you had mentioned earlier, and being there and knowing your people, showing up for those individuals that aren't getting those? And what would you recommend senior NCOs, flight chiefs, and tech sergeants that are leading to tell their peers other avenues for growth and development to kind of get back up on that horse and keep pressing?
I mean, first, be honest. It's funny when I was in the 317th and I got their shirt on, but when I was in the 317th, I would go out and, like, when I first got there, and just kind of meet people, and they were like, hey, I got DSD'd into this thing. Like, I didn't know that was a verb. Like, you didn't get DSD'd, man. Like, you got put into this to grow, and growth is all right. So when you're leading, so, it's a great question, Proc. So I would say this: be honest with people. When they're doing well, tell them, and when they're not, tell them. And when you have somebody that's like, but I was so great in CE and now I'm here, and how do I stack up? What I've heard before is we should have a bigger allocation for certain EPR ratings, because I was the best of the best and got selected for recruiting. And I would challenge that with, it's not just recruiting that we do that with. We do that with PME instructors, with MTIs and the like. So stop getting caught up in what is my rating right now. You do your thing. You listen, you do as much as you can, and you do well at your job, and you learn it, and you do these things, and your EPR will work itself out. What I would tell you is, if you're worried about, will I get promoted, or all those things, that should not be your primary focus. That can be a goal of yours to make, one day I want to make chief. Okay, cool, great. But I think the focus on everything that you do, whether it be in recruiting or your primary or another career field that you choose or anything, is how am I the best version of myself in this right now? And what do I need to get there? And too often I think that we get wrapped up in promotions. And what we don't get wrapped up in is how am I the best version of myself, number one, and how does that help this unit right now? Because you might need to be this right now as opposed to worrying about things that are way out of your control, like will I make master or will I make senior? And I used to get frustrated when I was like a master's. Like I had no vision of ever making chief, swear to God. Never thought I would have made senior. But I remember when I was like a master at Randolph, they would have these town halls at the base theater and say, someone would stand up there and say, let me tell you how to get to the top. And I'm like, I thought only 1% made it. So of these 100 people sitting here, a lot of them are going to be let down because they're thinking they're doing all the things you told them to do. But the best advice I ever got about promotions or EPRs or anything was this. I was a senior airman and I didn't know anything about making staff, and I was a civil engineer, and I heard some guys talking about making staff, and I said, so what do you got to do to make staff sergeant? And my tech sergeant boss, because back then techs ruled the world, right? And my tech sergeant boss said, you need to be a good senior airman. That's how you make staff. And he was so right. Like, master what you do. If you're here in recruiting, do really, really well at it. Doesn't mean to be 200,000% or put in 8 million people. But at the end of the day, if you can be honest with yourself and say, I'm good at what I do. I've learned it. And with the people I put in, I could look at myself in the mirror and be really, really happy with the quality of the person that I put in. Then hell, man, everything will work itself out. Don't get too caught up in EPR ratings. That's just my thought on it. And people might have different opinions of that. Like, hey, maybe you should change your duty title, or maybe you should write this way and all. I mean, in my experience, it's always just been, don't hide from tough jobs, and just do the best you can in the job you're in, but always look to the next one. So like if you're an EA recruiter, you should probably be thinking about, all right, let me master this one, and then let me look and say, what would it take for me to be in the next one? And if you're an HP recruiter, let me master this job, but what is it that I need to know to be in the next one? And take that last year maybe and really start trying to learn. If you do that, man, I think stuff will work itself out for you.
Well, I appreciate that perspective there, and you're spot on. And one other thing, I haven't seen any questions trickle in as far as resiliency, which means you're just spitting straight fire and facts. But what would you what are your views on NCOs spurring, organizations and focus groups? You and I had a conversation recently about a group that's in the works, and Chief Goldstrom is aware of it. The Women in Recruiting Empowering Dialogue. What is your opinion on organizations like that are, going to contribute greatly to resiliency for a focus group? Is it something that you think that, staffs and junior NCOs and senior NCOs should be looking at? Hey, these focus groups are a good idea for us to be able to speak to people that kind of got the same circumstances going on and same environments. Just kind of want to get your opinion on how you think that maybe can contribute to the overall resiliency mission.
Yeah, I think there should be more of it. I mean, look, and I don't think if you have a, so when Chief Lee rolled out the Women's Symposium, I think it was about 2 years ago, and she asked me what I thought of it. I'm like, hell, do it every month. I mean, look at our numbers. We need it. Number one. Number two, you have to look at trends and say, all right, so first, we need more women coming into recruiting in the first place. And then second, you go, all right, at the tier 2 level, we have a higher percentage of women that want to stay. That's great. Same with tier 3. But then after that, it kind of drops off. And you have to look at that and say, why? And what we don't need is 10 males sitting around coming up with reasons why women leave. Like, why would that even make sense? So you have these things to understand people better, and I would expand it even more. But what I don't think you should do is just have women at the women's symposium. I think you need a lot of men there too, so they can hear it, because there's certain, it's not like people are trying to exclude someone. I hope not. But there might be some things that we're doing that we don't even realize that they could give us some insight on. So why wouldn't we go, when COVID and all that kind of stuff, or if we do it on virtually? But yeah, I think of it this way, man. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I really only knew Philadelphia growing up. And then when I got in the Air Force, it was a tough transition for me. I was at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, which is really close to Philadelphia. But anyway, when I was there, they would have all these things. It was like Hawaiian Pacific Day. It would be all these different like cultural things that they would do at the NCO club. And we would go, and I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize all the cool things. Like, I just was never exposed to those different cultures. So to me, it was incredibly cool. So why wouldn't we do that more? Because when you have these things and you bring people in, it's shocking to learn what you learn, just because you have blind spots, whether you realize it or not. And it's, I mean, you can only get goodness out of these things. So hell, I would do them as much as you can, as much as we can afford, as much as we can get together with COVID, as much as we can do with Zoom. Keep doing them, because we got to figure this out, and we got to get this right.
Awesome. And while I have the platform, I definitely want to give a huge shout out to all the individuals that are involved with this Wired initiative: Sergeant Hunyadi, Sergeant Turner, the senior NCOs involved, Katie Woods, Sergeant Franco, Sergeant Gilly. Shout out. Thanks for supporting them and helping them push this. This is a big deal. I'm excited to see what it's going to grow into. I'm pumped about it. And just know you got 100% support. But I don't see any questions, Sergeant Garza. I don't think I've seen any questions come rolling in. So, I mean, that kind of wraps up the resiliency piece, Chief. So if any questions don't trickle in as far as resiliency goes, we're going to be able to, cut that cord and roll right into the professional side of this conversation, and kind of giving us the nuts and bolts about what's going on in USSF and what message it is that you need to deliver to your senior NCOs and NCOs here in AFRS.
Yeah, Proc, if I can just say one more thing about resiliency, man.
Yes, sir.
And I'll just kind of give you my brief story with this. So when I got into recruiting, I'd been in CE for 7 years, and everything was very family based. It was about 60 of us in a shop, and it was very close knit. We played cards together. We hung out together. We argued together, all those kind of things. And I got in recruiting. It was just me in an office, not co-located with the other branches. So that was a really, really tough experience for me. And it was really tough on my family as well. I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. So, you go working, burning it up for a 12-hour day, talking to everybody, and then you come home and your spouse has been sitting there with a 1- and 2-year-old watching Thomas the Tank Engine all damn day. And she just wants to talk to a human. And I don't want to talk to anybody because I've been doing it all day. There can be some friction there. So what I would really, really offer you is step away every once in a while. Like, it'll be there tomorrow. It'll be all right. And if you're a master sergeant or above listening to this right now, if you think your mission is going to crack because you can't let your person away for a day, then you really need to look at yourself and your leadership, because that might be the failing piece of this. If you catch yourself saying stuff like, don't take more than a week of leave, then maybe you need to take some leave, because that's not what we say. And that's not what we're about. If you tell somebody that, yeah, you can take leave, but keep your phone with you in case you got a processor that needs something, then maybe you need to relook some things about you, and call out and reach out for help if you're saying those things, or if you catch yourself saying those things, because that is not good for your people and their families. And it's not just about production. It's not just about that tech sergeant. They got a spouse and a couple kids sitting at home that could give a damn if there's a top flight, or if there's a I don't know, was it standard of excellence? Is that the thing everyone thinks they're going to make chief on? Like those things will fall off. And as you get older, like me, you don't even remember the silvers. You don't remember the, what is it, like the top recruiter of the first week of the month, plaques and all that kind of shit. Like you start remembering the people and the people that you've been around and the people that you recruited. So doing well is great, and being recognized for it is awesome. But the recognition is really the mission, and it's the people that you supported with the mission that you put into the Air Force. And if you're not comfortable with the people you're putting in, please don't God ever tell me about a plaque on your wall. I would rather you not have a plaque, but be proud of the people you put in, as opposed to the opposite. So, so think about that every once in a while. If I ever talk to you, I'm going to ask you what your BMT attrition rate was, and I want to see the letters on your desk from recruits that you put in that thanked you for what you did. And if you don't have many, I'm going to ask you a few questions. So think about it that way, man. Like when you get older, you're not going to sit there and go, damn, if I just would have got that 5th silver. Gives a shit. Like you're going to start talking about, the lifelong relationships that you built within recruiting service, and then with especially, and most especially the people that you put into the Air Force. And I'll just offer you this. If you ever recruited in the part of the country that I did for that many years, that you'll put in a few individuals that were homeless, that came from broken homes, that came from below the poverty line, and you offered them you offered them a whole new way of looking at life, and a whole new opportunity. And some of us that have stayed around this long that are from that area have probably benefited too. So please stop looking at this as numbers and start looking at this as people. And when you can see the effect that you have on a whole community, or how you've changed a family, you might look at this thing a little different. So excuse me if I got off on a tangent there, Proc, but please, guys, start looking at recruiting a little different than I filled a job today, and start looking at it as something completely different and completely life-changing. And were you the positive piece of that change, or were you the hustler that told a kid you can't join unless you put fuels down? And which one are you? And I'd offer you that. But yeah, I'd love to talk to space next, or if anyone has a question, Proc, whatever you think is best.
No, we're good, Chief. Well, we can we'll watch. We got Sergeant Garza checking it. So if a resiliency question does trickle in, or we'll just continue to monitor that. But definitely, I just wanted to say as well, Chief Schneider, I appreciate that. I'm a big man of the human element, so you're speaking to me. I think we could always use more of it. You could never have enough of the human factor involved in our jobs, both sides, both in professional and personal. So I think, like the training marketing just said, you crushed it. But let's rock and roll and get into the United States Space Force. I'm excited and curious at the same time to hear your message. So without further ado, let's rock and roll with it.
Yeah. So you guys know me long enough. You know that I like pushing the boundaries with some things and challenging how we've been doing it for a long time. Doesn't mean that we were wrong. It just means that how can we do things different? So what I like to think of is drawing the experiences that I've had. I've had the Northeast, where it's a little different than recruiting anywhere else, plus the HP experience, plus the special warfare experience, and see how we can find the best of those things and come up with something new. So one of the things we've presented to Chief Toberman and Miss Mulcahy, who's the S1, and General Raymond, is a recruiting force that consists of people from the Space Force, as opposed to relying on the Air Force to recruit Space Force. Because we all know that that's not sustainable. It's not fair to ask another branch to recruit for another branch. And what we've thought of is having potentially a couple of hubs around the country that have large AORs, don't get me wrong, but have a lot of technology and a lot of digital. So let me just give you this. COVID sucks. It does. I have not been in a bar since March 16th of 2020. That's no shit. And if you know me, that is crushing to my spirit. But with chaos, you can learn a lot, right? So what we've learned is that we can work distantly, and we can use technology, and we can get in the schools in a different way. We've used Zoom, we've used Teams, we've used FaceTime and all that. So why would I need 1,300 recruiters around the country in strip malls when I could have a team of them that are digitally enabled, and they could use all these things to do interviews, do school visits and all that. So for instance, if I have a school 45 minutes away from me and I set up a classroom presentation, I got to drive to the school, that's 45. Then I get there about 15 minutes early, so that's an hour. I do the classroom presentation, that's about an hour. I try to set up the next meeting, so that's about an hour. And then I drive back and we're talking an hour. So 4 hours. Well, what if I could just go in and do like a Zoom call or FaceTime or whatever, or Teams? I could do that classroom presentation in 45 minutes, answer all the questions, have a link for them or a QR code that they could scan in to load their information in. Why wouldn't I do it that way? As opposed to grinding out tier 1 schools or P1 school, P2, P3, whatever that is. So we want to look at recruiting differently in space than we do air. And again, it doesn't mean air is doing it wrong. It's just when you're trying to recruit 30,000 people, gotcha. But I'm trying to recruit 315. So how do I not just recruit 315? Because I know I can find that many people, but how do I find the right 315 is now the bigger question. So what does the selection process look for? If I have 600 people for 315 jobs, what am I looking for? So right now we're about to roll out a series of questions that they're going to answer that kind of speaks to the values of the Space Force and what are we looking for in that, similar to what LO does in their questionnaire. And then ultimately we'll get into interviews for them and have an interview panel that's like a selection board panel. And again, we're not looking for people that can pass the ASVAB and pass the physical. We want that, but we're looking a little deeper and trying to figure out who we think is the best fit for the Space Force. And that can come, that can be a little confusing sometimes, but we're trying to get after that thing. And how that looks right now, we're not 100%. We're going to try a bunch of different things. What we don't want to do is make it a ton of work for you at all. We want to make this thing as quick as humanly possible. And if they don't want to join the Space Force, cool. Or if we don't think they're a fit, that doesn't mean that they're bad or that they're not quality. It just means they might not fit it right. So then we'll say, all right, maybe you could look at the Air, Army, Navy, or Marine Corps. So we got that. And then we're looking at BMT changes right now. We've been kind of going through those iterations of what we're looking at for BMT. Is it BMT at Lackland? Is it somewhere else? If it is at Lackland, do we do our own flights? Like that kind of thing. And then that the iPad thing is big right now. It's not just iPad. I want to say it's tablet. We have a thing in with contracting to see what company we can use and how we use it. But the end state right now, we're trying to do the, that initial thing where you say, go do and do it in 8 weeks. That's what I got. So I'm getting iPads delivered to my house with, I have a box of Otter boxes right now to start shipping you guys when the iPads come in, and that sucks. So, but once we get it full on, it'll be a system where you can have an iPad or a tablet delivered with everything already loaded on it, and it goes right to the applicant, and then away we go. So they won't ever turn those back in. These are issued items to them. So again, it's just different. And then what I'd ask you though is if you have someone interested in Space Force, please don't do this. I know I shouldn't be negative, but please don't do you can join Space Force, but they hardly select anybody and you won't leave for 3 years. So list fuels, like, please don't do that. Please, because you wouldn't want that. Just if you're not sure, call me. Seriously, call me, email me, whatever. reach out to somebody. If someone comes in and says, I want to join the Space Force, and you say, well, I don't even know what that means. Hopefully, as a staff or a tech, before you say, I don't know what that means, you're reaching out and saying, hey, I need some training on this, and I'll provide it, man. We can sit for hours and we'll pour a cold beer and talk about it. But please reach out. So it's different, and we want to look at it different. And what I'd love to do one day is just kind of push over some things that we've learned over to air and say, hey, maybe you can possibly look at this and incorporate it how you want. So I know some questions came through, Proc, so I don't know if you guys got some stuff.
Yes, Chief. We actually have 2 questions right now. What are some of the attributes that you are looking for from the Space Force candidates?
Yeah, so first, that they want to join the Space Force. So if someone comes into your office and says, I don't know, I'm trying to think if I want to be Marine infantry or intel, probably Marine infantry at that point. We want people that really are into that space kind of thing. And what I mean by that is this: not that I saw the commercial and the commercial looks cool, but that I want to do something different. I want something new. I've looked at it and I've read about it and I'm really into it. What I think I would caution you with is somebody says, should I be an X-ray tech or should I do space systems? Those are completely 2 different things. I would say that person isn't quite sure what they want to do. And then the other thing I would say with it is, if someone says, I'll do space or I'll do air as long as I can only be intel, I would caution you with that one too, because space is looking at everyone being a part of the mission and not getting so tribal. So if you say, hey, you guys get this. Hey, I don't want to be heavy crew chief. I only want to be tactical crew chief. I mean, okay. So in space, there's only a few career fields. We're looking for somebody that wants to do space, not specifically in AFSC, if that makes sense. We want somebody that's intelligent. We want somebody that's been through, and intelligent, not just measured by the ASVAB, but somebody that can go, if I said, tell me about a time that you had to work in a team, could talk to me about that. Not just sports, but anything. Tell me about something that you had to overcome to get where you are now, that they could talk about that and not be so, well, I volunteered with an organization downtown. I was in 4-H. I did this and I did that. I'd rather have somebody that said, I worked at McDonald's because I had to work my way through high school. That to me rates as high as somebody that had, some of those other extracurriculars. And there's no silver bullet. And I know that we're so into checklists to say, if this, then that, and there isn't here. It's one of those that we want to evaluate each person and see who's the best fit for it. I know it's a shitty answer, but it's the one I got.
Next question, Chief, is for those that were just selected from AFRS, do you have anything to do with that? And any advice, like, do they have to wait their code 50 time with AFRS, or are they going to move quicker?
So you're talking Space Force people that got selected to go to Space Force but are in AFRS?
Correct.
Yeah, so they got to wait out assignment stuff and then they head back over to space. But we want to utilize them while they're here in AFRS to help build this thing. So if we have some people that have been selected for Space Force in recruiting service, please have them raise their hand, because we have a few commanders that way, so we can get information out to recruits.
Gotcha. And the next question is, Chief, why are tablets being shipped to the squadron just to be shipped to the recruiter? Why not just skip or ship directly to the recruiter and save the cash?
Yeah, I 1000% agree. All right, so my bad. Sometimes you think things will be great and they suck. So this is why I need you guys' feedback, because what I've learned is this: we've had 3 shippers now show up to BMT without a tablet because I shipped them to squadrons and somebody there went, I didn't know what to do with it. So I can email all day, but I think what we're going to do on this next round is I'm going to email each recruiter and say, where would you like it shipped? Your home or your office, depending on what you're doing for COVID. Give you the tracking number so you can get it right to the applicant. Now, here's what I'll be honest with you is the January 6th, I think it's January 5th or 6th, ship day. it's going to be a quick turn. So I'm going to get these things from Apple because of like COVID and the holiday season and all that. There's some lag time with the shipping. And Sergeant Turner, I'll get to yours next because I got something on that. But we'll get it right to the recruiter, and you guys tell me where. But after the 6th, everyone will get them about 30 days out so that they have it beforehand. And Garza, tell me if I'm wrong. Did that question from Turner say why not just ship them to the MEPS?
Yes, Chief.
All right. So the reason behind the iPad is not just that they go to BMT with it. The reason for the iPad is so that they have it even about 30 to 45 days before BMT, so they can complete some stuff called Udemy training. Udemy is a commercial website where they have like on-demand training. Think of it as ADLS done right. And you know, we've all been on ADLS where that creepy guy with the sweater vest that tells you to take your CAT card out from your computer, that kind of thing. It's completely different than that. It's much better. So we're having them complete 6 training modules. Well, we can't we can't say it's mandated because we'd have to pay them, but it's highly recommended. So please lead through this with your DEPers. But it's all about like emotional intelligence and resilience and stuff like that. And what we're finding is the trainees are getting in there and completing this stuff and looking for more. So they're really, really embracing it. The first like 14 had something about 140 hours of training that they completed, and we only asked them to do like 70. So they're really, really getting into it. So if you give it to them at MEPS, they don't get a chance really to set themselves up. So they can access this training on their device, whether it be the iPad or their home computer or their phone. Don't get me wrong. But what I think this does is level the playing field for those that have and those that don't. So I've recruited, again, in neighborhoods where there might not be a home computer, there might not be a home device, there might not be a phone that can access this stuff. So if we provide that for them, it levels the playing field for the haves and have-nots, and really gets after not just diversity in color or gender or whatever, but diversity in economics as well, if that makes any kind of sense to you.
And one more question, Chief. Issuing tablets prior to BMT seems like we are going to buy ourselves expenses with broken, damaged, or lost items. How are we mitigating these probable issues?
Yeah, so they're not turning them back in. They keep them for their life. So think of it as issued items. So when I was in CE, when I went to Germany, I got cold weather gear issued to me. I didn't have to turn it back in. I just kept it. Now, if I lost it, I was going to be cold. So we're thinking of this as the same way. And again, it's tough, man. You got to break out of the same old thing that we've always known and think of something different. And what we're saying is let this be a lifelong learning tool for them so they can save all the stuff that they had pre-accession. And they have a Google Docs site that they can download all their BMT stuff onto it. Then they'll get to tech training and they'll have some stuff that they're going to download onto the iPad there. Then they get to their first assignment and they have all their FTAC stuff on it. And then they get to ALS and they put their ALS stuff on it. And then the system will eventually crap out. You know, they don't last that long. But we're not looking for it back. I mean, think about it, what colleges do. If you go to college nowadays, a lot of them issue you a device your freshman year and you keep it throughout. You don't turn it back in. So if somebody loses it, then somebody loses it. We'll figure it out. If somebody sells it on the black market, they do. I mean, but we're going to have some kind of, we're working with Apple right now to, it's going to be like a business management type or device management type system, centrally run through AFRS with Colonel Graff and his team, to where if somebody says, I lost my device, we can access that device and completely wipe it. So whoever stole it won't see what we're seeing. But there's not going to be any PII on it. They're not going to be CAC enabled into it. There won't be any SCIF type training in it. It'll be pretty much a learning tool, a training tool for them. So I always think of it this way. Whenever I switch assignments or PCS, I have to scramble to get the shit off my old computer onto the new one. And how does that legally work? And where can I house all this stuff? Imagine not having to deal with that when it comes to learning. and be able to have all this on this iPad for at least 3 to 4 years and have some continuity with the stuff that you're doing, if that makes sense to you.
Perfect sense, Chief, as always. But hey, Chief Schneider, if you want to give us some final words of wisdom, and then I'd like to afford the opportunity and pass the mic to our command chief, Chief Goldstrom, if you wouldn't mind addressing your top three and your 5-6 members after Chief Schneider closes, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Proc, and thanks all of you guys for doing this and for having this is one of the coolest things I think recruiting services ever seen, is this virtual top three, or top three and Rising 5-6 around a GSU based command, or however you want to call it. That you guys have been doing this for years is incredible to me. And I would say this to what you guys went through with COVID and the professionalism and what you were able to do is incredible to me. But I would say this whole thing runs on staffs and techs and your ingenuity. Old guys like me and Chief Goldstrom can't figure out anything new because our brains are full. So we need staffs and techs and masters to come up with how we're going to do business over the next 5 to 10 years. And chiefs are great at helping you get there, but we can't think of it. So please, God, learn from everything that you're doing now in this environment. Write it down, get it to somebody so we can start implementing this stuff. And Chief Goldstrom, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, Chief, thanks so much. And thank you so much for investing in our teammates today. I will tell you, you got me fired up. I loved your talk today. I loved your thoughts on resilience. And you got me in the feels a little bit, because when you talked about the opportunities that our recruiters make available to young applicants, when you talked about those applicants that were homeless, those applicants that came from broken homes, those applicants that lived below the poverty line, my friend, that was me. So you got me in the feels today a little bit with that one. So thank you so much for saying that, and thank you so much for sharing your stories. More so, though, thank you for your talk on resiliency and what we expect out of our senior NCOs within this command. As I was listening to you talk, two things came to mind. The first was A536-2618, right? The enlisted force structure. When we think about mass starts, we're thinking about organizational leaders. It's so much more than tactical level issues and tactical level leadership. It's organizational level issues. And I think you touched on that when you talked about the right balance, right? The right balance of production, the right balance of leading people. You very eloquently articulated that. So thank you so much. The other part that really struck home with me was what I heard you talk about was intrusive leadership, right? Get in there and ask the tough questions. I had someone do that for me. A lot of the teammates know I came off of a 1-year deployment just recently prior to coming to this job. And during that deployment, we lost 3 teammates in combat support operations. Corporal Brody Gillen, Tech Sergeant Marshall Roberts, Specialist Juan Corvallis. 3 people I will never ever forget. But my first sergeant, after that incident, stopped me because I needed to talk to somebody. She showed intrusive leadership. She didn't have to do that, but she did. Then subsequently got the help that I needed in that regard, and still getting that help that I need in that regard. So I share that to our teammates, is that as Chief Schneider talked about, you got to know when to dial back a little bit. You got to know when to dial back a little bit. And sometimes it's with the help of your friends and your teammates and your coworkers that will allow you to do that. Lastly, you talked about the resiliency pillars, and that is something that is so important to me. Your social, physical, spiritual resiliency pillars, that's stuff that we all need to lean on, because you're right, Chief. COVID does suck, but it's taught us a lot of things. Lastly, I will tell you, this is an outstanding top 3 in this geographically dispersed command. And along with that, and I saw Sergeant Turner dial in, and I've got to give a shout out to the 562, because they are doing amazing things. I'll tell you, having the privilege to serve in this capacity, knowing that we have such a robust, dynamic AFRS 5.6 and AFRS top 3 makes us feel better and stronger in the team that we have. So to all of you, thank you so much. Chief Schneider, really appreciated your talk today. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you again, Chief Goldstrom, Chief Schneider, for taking this time. To everybody who joined us today, please make sure, again, this is a time, make sure you check on your wingman, be a good wingman. If you need to reach out to somebody, take a picture of the faces you see before you and reach out to one of us for any help, assistance, talk, guidance, discussion, mentorship. That's what we're here for. That's what the top 3 does. That's what the 5-6 there is for as well for the junior NCOs. But on behalf of the top 3, I want to wish everybody happy holidays. Please enjoy the time off. Make sure you take time off, dial back, enjoy it, and come back 2021 strong. But thanks again for joining us, and you all have a good one.
Thanks, Brock.
Thank you.